We're now on day 3 of Andy Stanley's devotional called Visioneering. Today's devotional is called Connected to the Source, and the verse is John 15, verse 5. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit, for apart from me you can do nothing. So this is about us being connected to God to really bear spiritual fruit, because without him you may do things, you may have results in the secular world, you may have results in a worldly sense, but it's not spiritual fruit that will last into eternity. Continue reading this for you. Connected to the source. Several years ago, Sandra and several of her friends felt a burden for the young women at our church. Sandra asked if they could pursue beginning a women's ministry built around the idea of older women mentoring younger women. I thought it was a great idea, so I began asking her questions about how she was going to go about setting up this ministry. She didn't have any answers to any of these questions, but she did have a great response for me. She said, "We would like to take a year to pray and plan." A year? They wanted to wait an entire year before launching the women's ministry. In church work, this is unheard of. Customarily, you start before you are ready. You publicize it before you have staffed it. Then you spend years complaining about how nobody is committed anymore. So I thought this was interesting because in ministry, sometimes you're encouraged to walk by faith and not walk by sight, which is still true, but a lot of times we take that to the extreme where nothing is ready, you don't know exactly what you're going to do. It's literally a blind step of faith. Sometimes you're encouraged to do it scared. Now you can take that to the extreme where you're just doing it, you're jumping in without any skills, no equipping, just not ready, and you're doing it, and that can actually have a disastrous result. I think instead of doing it in a way where you're just basically using this foolish boldness, but in the end it's not with God, maybe God's saying wait, and you jump ahead in front of him, feeling like you are emboldened, feeling like you're doing something courageous because you're doing this for God, and in the end the results come back less than desirable. We need to use God's wisdom, not our own wisdom. If you're praying about it and you're planning it, then you can be sure that you're taking that step cautiously, yes, still in faith, but cautiously with a plan, strategically as well. You can also take to the other extreme where when you want to get everything ready, everything perfect before you do something. Now, in the last devotional, I said that God wants everything perfect, right? Before you step ahead, he wants everything to be ready and it's worth the wait. You can take those to different extremes. You don't want to have to wait, keep waiting and never actually, like John Maxwell says, swing the bat. You have to sometimes, when you feel God telling you, okay, it's now. You just have to take that step. Like Peter taking the step out of the boat. He wasn't ready, but because Jesus was the one who said, now it's time, come, step out. It was Jesus who invited him out, then everything was okay. Peter was able to stand on that water. And the moment he looked away from Jesus, he started sinking, right? So we have to really wait and make sure that God is the one calling us out. God is making sure to give us that cue. Okay, now it's your cue to step out. So there's an element of also waiting and praying. And I thought this was a really good example. The women ministry that Andy Stanley shares about, they waited, they prayed, and they planned for a whole year. So it's an example of praying and planning at the same time. It's not just about praying and waiting things to just materialize out of thin air, but you have to plan. You also have to be strategic with God giving you that wisdom to do so. Okay, I'll continue reading. But for 12 months, Sandra and her team prayed and planned. At the end of the year, they went public with their plans. And from day one, it was evident that God had given them a strategy. I sat back in amazement as this team mobilized and trained the older women in our congregation. Then, with what had to be a divine guidance, they paired younger women with older ones. We heard story after story of how the women they put together were a perfect match. So again, they never let go of God. The devotion is called Connected to the Source, and if we're connected to the Source, who is God, we're going to be able to know exactly what he wants us to do. And even in this case, they were able to pair women to women with divine guidance. God knew how to launch a women's ministry in our church. He just needed somebody to step up to the plate and wait for the right pitch. A divine vision is not dependent upon us making something happen. It is dependent upon God making something happen. Jesus explained it to his disciples in terms of branches abiding in the vine in order to bear fruit. To which we are tempted to respond, now wait, certainly I can do something. True, but nothing of eternal consequence. And yet, God's vision for your life or mine is chock full of eternal consequence. So that's a huge challenge for us. It's an invitation to challenge ourselves when we want to feel like, I can do something, be active, go about doing this and that. I can make a list. I have a task list I can do. I know exactly what I need to do. I think it's good to slow down a little bit and just ask God, is this something? Is this particular task something that you want me to do, Lord? Is this task, will it have eternal consequence in the way that will add to the vision that you have for me? When left to our own ingenuity, we can foul up a vision in short order. That's a real wake-up call, because sometimes our ingenuity is not God's ingenuity. Our ways are not his ways are not our ways. So a lot of times we have to leave room for God to work, leave room for God to speak into us, for his wisdom to be in the project. God's work done God's way in God's time is always successful. Let me repeat that. God's work done in God's way in God's time is always successful. God doesn't make mistakes. He never makes mistakes. So we need to trust him that his work in his time, done his way, will always be successful. And it comes off in such a way as to point back toward the source, God. Everything we do, all the success that we have to point it back to him. He is the source, and that success is connected to the source, who is God. So think about what it will look like for you to stay connected to God so you can carry out his vision according to his plan. Carrying out his vision according to his plan. We're just really instruments to carry out his vision. It's not even our vision, and we have to surrender that. It's a really important humbling exercise to declare that I surrender this vision to you, Lord. This is your vision. And just to double check, Lord, if this is not your vision, take it from me. Because we want God's will done on earth, right? Let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So it has to be his will, his vision, and we're here physically to be his hands and his feet, for him to use us. And that really involves us surrendering even our visions, even our plans, and letting him use our mind, use our intellect the way that he wants to use it to accomplish his visions here on earth.